the mathematics involved to say, actually, yes, if we just did this and did this, we would have this money, and continue to use poverty as a tool for oppression.
Let me take you up on this. Your party is barely 4 months old, if I'm correct. And you how have you been able to break, your party? What are you bringing to the table for average Nigerians, especially away from what we used to have from the mainstream media party? I mean, mainstream parties that have failed them. What is it that's different about your party?
What is different about us is the willingness to govern. Government is, I don't want to say easy, but it's certainly achievable. What it requires is the willingness to put the money where it's meant to be, to do the things that you're supposed to do, to put up the buildings that you're supposed to put up, to rebuild the roads that are falling apart, to not divert funds from what they're meant to be for into private coffers. The only thing that we are proposing is, number one, a willingness to govern. Number two, a deliberate approach towards government. Every single party has a manifesto, has, oh, we're going to do this. Oh, I remember I was reading newspaper clippings as young as 6, 7, 8. There are clippings going back into the 70s, 80s, talking about power supply, for example. This is something that every single party promises. So it's not really about the promising, it's the willingness, the deliberate act of giving these things to Nigerians, and not thinking about what you will lose. So we have a lot of people in power today who are concerned about, oh, well, why should I have access to 2 billion or 5 billion or 10 billion. Why should I rebuild that road? They've been managing the road like that and nothing has happened. And the funds go elsewhere and nothing happens, nothing gets said. Every 4 years you come through, you do see and buy with the votes, you do bags of rice and things like that. And then, it continues. It's just a cycle.
A major argument given by people who agree with your party's policy, more than they agree with APC or PDP, but are using their time and energy now to elect them, so to say, is that there's a very remote chance that your party candidate could win these elections.
Sure.
Do you really think that your party can win in the forthcoming elections? And how prepared are you?
100% prepared to win, 100% prepared to take Nigeria into the future, because the win isn't for us. What happens if we say we win? The win is for Nigerians. It's for them. It's to say, finally, that work that you've been hoping for, a government that works for you, that dawn that kept getting postponed, oh, one day it will be our turn, one day this country will be great, one day we'll go back to being the giants of Africa, one day. Guess what? That day is now. Going back to your argument about how slim the chances are, if you think about the fact that in 2008, a black man with a Muslim first name and a Muslim surname, emerged the president of the United States of America. And you could say a whole bunch of things. You could say it's Obama's great rhetoric, the great power when it comes to narration, and yes, we can, and all of that. It wasn't that. Americans were tired. And when you are tired of the status quo, it gives somebody who seems like they have a minute chance, a real chance to make a change. It gives Nigerians the chance to say, do you know what? Let's try him. Let's try him, because we've been doing things the old way and it hasn't worked for us. So if you think about the fact that leaders have emerged throughout history during these cracks of opportunity, when a nation is at a crossroads and saying, we don't know what to do, but we know we can't continue like this. And someone comes up and says, I will put my life on the line and I will stand in the gap to make things a little bit different. And let's just do this. And with your backing, we can do this. The nation turns around and says, do you know what? What's the worst that could happen? Let's do it.
How would your party be able to manage to break into the establishment media? You are the director of PR, media and communications, and in a way that has not been achieved.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that question, actually, because I do have a love-hate relationship with the Nigerian media. I have to say that. Once again, so we're going back to using poverty as a tool for oppression, because if you keep people deprived, then all you have to do is dangle a little carrot and they will follow you because they are hungry. So you condition them to be grateful for small gifts, small tokens and things like that. So when we started this campaign, we had a hard time getting into mainstream media. We knew we had a story to tell. We knew we had an interesting story to tell. We knew it was a story that Nigerians needed to hear. But we couldn't get anyone to give us that opportunity. It was quite simply, we wouldn't pay. We just wouldn't, exchange stories for money. Now, I come from a school of media where in 1988, I was a child. I was a child, and I saw Tiananmen Square. And the BBC covered a story where a young Chinese student stood right in the middle of, in front of a armored tank and covered that. And I couldn't get my head around. I was also alive and a child when the Berlin Wall came down. Media houses around the world cover stories because they are interesting, because they are topical. The work the journalists do in keeping you informed on what is happening in your country. And it doesn't matter who is doing it. If your president is holding you in a vice grip, it is the job of the media house to liberate you and have that news. What you do with the news is your business. But you must be in a position of knowledge. You must know this is what is happening in our nation and we don't like it. Or actually, this is what is happening in our nation and we do like it. We do want the government to act this way on our behalf. We do want to go to war with this country because they are impeding on our boundaries and they are taking our liberties for granted. So dealing with traditional Nigerian media houses where it does not matter if the sky is falling down. If you will not grease their palms or make the story worth their while, then they won't cover it. But it was very frustrating for me, but I didn't bank on the gritty steadfastness of our principal, Omoyele Sowore. I kept going back to him and I kept saying, I'm losing my mind here. We're writing all of these articles, we've got all of this fantastic stuff, and it's not going out. What do we do? And he just kept saying, they will come. They will come. There's going to come a time when the Take It Back movement, the African Action Congress, and Omoyele Sowore in terms of the principal and therefore the presidential candidates cannot be ignored. You are going to have to cover this story if you consider yourself a media house worth your salt. So we bided our time, and here we are today. We were at the big debate, I should say, the big debate in Abuja earlier on today. As you know, we've been on channels, we've been on AIT, we've been on. These are stations we've been on. So when we talk about print media, we are in Vanguard, we are in Tribune, we're also we do have a lot of coverage on Sahara Reporters, which I would like to use this opportunity to say they are completely different bodies, right? We've had news articles and press releases that we have forwarded to Sahara Reporters that Sahara Reporters hasn't covered simply because it's not topical. We can push our content to you and we would like you to cover every single thing that we do. But I have to have the utmost respect for the integrity when it comes to your journalism. I have seen articles on APC, on Sahara Reporters. I've seen stuff on PDP. I know